Aloha, and thank you for joining us tonight. Our virtual series, Talk Story and Pau Hana with hashtag HFWF, continues by highlighting the heroes and thought leaders in our state that have risen up and created a movement in their communities to create a more resilient and sustainable Hawaii. For tonight's event, we've partnered with Kamehameha Schools to feature individuals and organizations that are usually incredibly busy serving others. It's part of our mission to not only spotlight Hawaii as a culinary destination, but also spotlight those who are working to increase food security in our islands by both producing and distributing our local agricultural products. We want to use our platform, Hawaii Food and Wine Festival, to bring attention to the amazing work that nonprofit organizations and individuals like the ones sitting on our panel tonight are accomplishing. Even during COVID-19, each of them has brought change to our communities by uniting people and creating a movement through agriculture. Now let's get started with our Pau Hana, a virtual mixology class by our Hawaii Food and Wine Festival mixologist and Ko Hana Distillers General Manager, Kyle Reutner. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello, hello. Hi, Denise. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for being here tonight to do this for us.
Of course, thanks for having me. We're thrilled to be able to share what we do. So for everybody tuning in, like Denise said, I am Kyle Reutner of Ko Hana Distillers. My background is all in hospitality. So obviously the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival has been a wonderful thing for me to have in my life. I also am fortunate enough to be able to work with the Hawaii Agricultural Foundation and Kamehameha Schools in exactly what you're going to be talking about today, which is actually growing food on our islands and growing crops here. So for those of you that don't know, Ko Hana rum is based right here on the island of Oahu, out in Old Kunia. We grow every bit of sugarcane that goes into our bottles right here on our island. So we really, really love doing that. Let's get right to it though. Today we're going to be making a Kojito, our iteration of a classic mojito. What are you going to need to do that? You're going to need phenomenal rum. You're going to need fresh lime, a little bit of sugar, in this case in a syrup form, and fresh mint as well as soda water. So this is a drink that is not meant to be complicated. It's meant to be easy to make and easy to drink. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down very simply. I'm going to start with fresh mint. What I'm going to do is just peel off these leaves here. And I'm going to take, I'm pretty greedy with my mint flavor in my mojito. So I went and picked up some mint today. I'm going to use somewhere around 15, maybe even 20 mint leaves. So quite a bit. And that's because I really want that refreshing mint flavor to come out in the cocktail. So once I've added those mint leaves to my glass, I'm going to take a lime and I'm going to cut across the equator of that lime, and that's going to give me a lime half, and then I'm going to cut that into little quarters of lime. You're going to ask, why do you do that, Kyle, instead of just juicing fresh lime? Because there's actually some amazing flavors in the peel of the lime as well as the pith. So I'm going to use 6 lime quarters. For those of you that are counting at home, that means 3/4 of a lime. Sorry about that. 1/2 and then another quarter of that. I'm going to add a little bit of simple syrup. I'm going to eyeball it because I've been doing it for a very, very long time. That's going to be about 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. If you don't have simple syrup, don't hesitate to just use 2 spoonfuls of table sugar. We'll put that in there. Then what you're going to do is you're going to muddle that down. You'll notice that the first thing I added was mint. And why I did that is to protect that mint from getting broken apart by my muddler. Oftentimes we'll get asked, hey, do I really need a muddler, Kyle? Do I need any of this fancy equipment? Like, you didn't see me use a jigger to start off with. I didn't need to measure because this is going to be for my Pau Hana. I don't need to measure every little bit. You do not need a mojito muddler, although it's a nice thing to have around for those of you that make lots of drinks. You can use the back of a wooden spoon. You can use, the end of a spatula, any number of things to just express that juice out of there and start to get that mint livened up. Now, if you happen to just juice your fresh lime juice and not have the actual lime in there, and you're pressing on that mint, make sure not to break it apart. As soon as you rip a piece of mint, it starts to become slightly bitter, and that's the chlorophyll in there. So watch out for that. Now let's take about 1.5 ounces of Ko Hana Hawaiian Agricole rum. Use great rum, whether it's ours or someone else's. Make sure you use great rum. If you can use local rum, try to do that. Now we've got our base for our Kojito. I'm going to add a little bit of ice. And then to bring a little effervescence and freshness to it, I'm going to add soda water. So right now, this drink is going to taste and smell pretty fantastic. It's going to look pretty good as well, obviously. What's going to really make your mojito pop, if you're making this for your husband, wife, best buddy, coworkers, colleagues, if you save the tops of your mint, what we call the sprigs, the very, very top of it, keep those and use the bottom portions as your leaves in there. You can actually liven that mint up just a touch, put it into your glass, and you will have this nice bouquet, just like you were at a cocktail bar, say Bar Leather Apron or the Pig and the Lady or a Roy's restaurant. You'll get that same wonderful vibe from the drink. And then you've got that smell as you dig in. I'll have 2, thank you very much. So for anybody following along, if you have questions, I'm here for a little bit. I am excited to get you all going. I'm really excited to hear what the panel has to say this evening. And thanks again for the invitation to show everybody how to make a Kojito. Aloha, guys.
Mahalo, Kyle. Appreciate that. Hey, by the way, Ko Hana rum is grown on Hawaii Ag Foundation Ag Park in Kunia. So,
yes,
you know, Kyle knows that, but I'm letting you folks know that as well.
Yeah.
All right.
We love that.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Appreciate it. My name is Devin Nicole. I am the morning host of the Rise and Drive show weekdays on Kumu 94.7. And I'm excited to be here and be the moderator. I'm looking at a giant monitor now. Moderator for tonight's event. It's my pleasure to introduce a person that is making great strides for the community on the island of Hawaii. Our keynote tonight is Kristen Frost Albrecht, who serves as the executive director of the Food Basket, Hawaii Island's food bank with sites in both Hilo and Kona. Albrecht leads a hardworking team that distributes over 4 million meals worth of good, healthy food annually, directly and through a network of 100 plus partner agencies to more than 80,000 residents per month on Hawaii Island. Under her leadership, the Food Basket is responding to the dramatic increase in food insecurity as a result of the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to those of the recent Kilauea lava flow and Hurricane Lane. They also launched the statewide initiative of the Double Bucks program, offering 50% discounts on local fruits and vegetables from local retailers and farmers markets. Albrecht is also focused on the food bank's expansion of innovative new partnerships and programs to end hunger at its roots, and its longstanding food systems efforts to ensure that food addresses immediate hunger needs, is used for improved health and well-being, and charts a course towards achieving a hunger-free future for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kristen. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for a nice introduction. That was great. First, a big mahalo to the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival for this talk story, and Pau Hana event, and to Kamehameha Schools for their sponsorship. It's really nice to be here. As Devin mentioned, we are Hawaii Island's sole food bank, and we have offices and warehouses in both Kona and Hilo. And I'm going to share my screen here. Just a moment. This is always the hardest part, is finding what you need. Forgive the. Okay, there we go. Can everybody see that? I'm hoping. Okay, we serve the entire 4,028 square miles of our very big island, which does have huge hunger needs this year. And pictured here is Papo Ramos, one of our drivers, and he's also a spokesperson for our Debucks program, so you'll hear from him shortly. So our mission is really simple: to end hunger in Hawaii County. Ulu is our produce mascot. It's a food that is widely seen as one that could end hunger and is one of the original canoe crops. Plus it's super nutritious and versatile. It has been said that if you plant an ulu tree, you can feed a family of 4 for 50 years. The food basket is working on ending hunger in many ways, both short-term and long-term. And today I'm going to talk a little about 2 programs, our Ohana Food Drops and Debucks Double Up Food Bucks. So I do just have to say we are deeply, deeply rooted in community, founded in 1989 by Carol Ignacio, a social worker, pictured here, and Barry Taniguchi, CEO of KTA Superstores. The first donation of food was from KTA and distributed out of the back of Carol's Toyota Tercel trunk. And our logo is based on a drawing made by an 11-year-old girl whose family needed help during a particularly challenging time. It includes a rainbow, lahala weave, and in the basket, foods we give on the Big Island. This is still very much a part of our world today. So how food banking works, most of you are probably familiar, but this year we had big changes. Commodity food and surplus food donations typically make up the emergency food we distribute. However, when the supply chain was disrupted due to the pandemic, we turned to our local food supply in order to meet the high volume of need in our community. For the first time in our history, we are purchasing food rather than relying on donations for our emergency food programs. When disaster strikes, hunger gets worse. It's just a fact. A recent Feeding America report has Hawaii as one of the 5 most food insecure states in the nation, and also estimates that 1 in 3 of our keiki are at risk of hunger. 7 years, 4 major disasters, hurricanes, lava, and a pandemic. Multi-millions of dollars in damages and lost benefits on Hawaii Island. We've been in a constant cycle of disaster response, relief, and recovery. Disasters are our new normal, and when they happen, disaster response becomes our highest priority, like it is this year. So I'm going to tell you a little about our Ohana Food Drops. They've become our main pandemic response program. We hold these drive-through pandemic safe events 10 times every month in communities island-wide. It is a year this week since we held our first Ohana Food Drop in Pahala. This is an overhead shot of a drop at the old airport in Kona. In 2019, as Devin mentioned, we were serving 14,000 individuals every month, and now we have been serving over 80,000 individuals a month. A huge change for us. With breaks in the supply chain, we've relied on local producers. When we couldn't access rice, we purchased thousands of potatoes or thousands of pounds of steamed and frozen ulu, kalo, and sweet potato to distribute. And here, this is all food that we were distributing last week in Kona. You can see we've got Waimea tomatoes, that's steamed and frozen ulu. We've got all sorts of avocados and apple bananas. We serve anyone in need. 85% of our Ohana Food Drop recipients are unemployed or furloughed due to the pandemic. So it's been quite the ride for all of us, but we've had incredible support along the way. And this is just like a sample of it. Somebody driving through for food, and their kids drew these beautiful pictures and put them in the window for us. So I want to take you on a little drive through our rear view mirror, and you can see some of the wonderful partners who have helped to keep our community fed. Wanted to mahalo you all. Our mission at the Food Basket is to end hunger on Hawaii Island, and that's a huge job. We work hard at this every day. We're passionate about it, and we cannot do it without each one of you. We've had tremendous support from Suisan and from Hilo Products and Honao Market, as well as over 100 Hawaii Island farmers. I also want to mahalo our Hawaii Island ranchers and the County of Hawaii, as well as the police, the sheriff, and the National Guard. Each one of you has brought us something really special. Also the service groups, special mahalo to the Lions. They've been awesome. And then the CERT teams too. So mahalo to all of you. Mahalo to our donors, you individuals out there that have contributed money to our COVID-19 response. We love you. So, looking to the future, Debucks Double Up Food Bucks is a program we believe can help end hunger in our state and create more food secure communities. We always say triple win for families, farmers, and the local economy. This program allows SNAP beneficiaries to buy locally grown produce for half price. In 2017, we received a $500,000 USDA grant matched by another $500,000 in community funds to launch the Debucks program on Hawaii Island at grocery stores, farmers markets, and CSAs. In 2019, in collaboration with the Hawaii Good Food Alliance and many community partners, we were awarded nearly $1 million in federal funds matched by an equal amount in community funds to take this program statewide. Debucks helps our farmers, our local economy, and our low-income residents, and uses the federal dollars of the SNAP program as leverage. The program is available at 80 retail outlets statewide and accessible to 77% of the state's SNAP recipients. So now Papo is going to share a little more about the program in this short video.
Hey Hawaii, are you signed up for one of these SNAP EBT cards? If so, you can receive 50% off local produce at the Debucks grocery store. My name is Papa. I'm here outside KTA Superstores on the Big Island. Come on in and let me show you how we work. First, you need to make sure you have your access card. If you don't already have one, you can sign up online at debucks.org. Next, look for fruits and vegetables with the box logo. That's how you know it's 50% off. We can find all these wonderful produce for half price with the bucks. Papayas, pineapples, cucumbers, lettuce, and lots more. So now it's time to check out with my friendly cashier, Angela. I make sure to give her my access card and my SNAP EBT at the start of the transaction, so she will know I'm using the bucks. After bringing up my purchase, she scans the access card to apply the 50% discount. Okay, the last step to pay my remaining balance with my SNAP EBT card. Find a participating store near you so you can take home more local fruits and vegetables. Yeah.
Debucks, double up food bucks.
Okay. I'm just going to share a little about our 2020 Debucks results. This program ended up being a pandemic program because of just the enormous amount of increase that we saw, and farmers who are losing $2 million a week were able to up their sales with this program. So we think these results are pretty stunning. Nearly $1 million in discounts issued and almost $2 million back into the pockets of farmers and the local economy, and lots of healthy, affordable food purchased by our low-income families. We are hoping to expand Debucks into 10 rural high-need areas and add additional retail partners. We are in the process of putting together a $2.5 million federal grant request and looking for another $2.5 million in community match to keep this program going. This will allow us to implement the Debucks expansion and continue helping our farmers, the local economy, and our low-income residents with improved access to affordable, healthy food. And what you see there are the logos of many of our retail partners. And then from all of us at the Food Basket, mahalo. It's been great to be here with you. Thank you so much.
And Kristen, thank you so much for spending that time with us. Man, that is just amazing how much you guys have achieved in that short amount of time. It blows my mind. So thank you for all your hard work, and the Food Basket doing some wonderful things on the Big Island. So mahalo, appreciate it.
Mahalo.
You're going to be sitting on the panel, so we'll be excited when people have questions for you. Okay, so hang tight. Without further ado, let's open it up to our panelists, each representing organizations that are rising up in the community. At the end, we will have time for our panelists to answer questions. So you can use the Q&A function to write in your questions, include their name if it's a question for someone in particular. Okay, I'll start by having each of the panelists introduce themselves. Please say your name and tell us a little about your organization, when it was established, where it's based, what's your mission, and the role that you play in it. Dean and Michelle, why don't we start with you?
Aloha. Thank you, first of all, Hawaii Food and Wine Festival for including us in this panel discussion. We're really happy to be here and to share a little bit about our farm and our programming. Also, I just want to thank you, Kristen, for that wonderful presentation that you gave. It's just mind-blowing to hear the reach that you guys are able to achieve in this time of need, and how the community just came together to get food to the people who need it, and especially collaborating with the local farmers. That just really blesses our hearts. We are on the island of Oahu, and if you can see in the background, we can kind of move. This is our 3.5. We have a 8-acre piece of property in the community of Monowili, which is located on the island of Oahu, in the township of Kailua. We started out on this big adventure in 2003 with a big idea. Dean at that time was a teacher, particularly with at-risk youth in the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility, teaching about growing food and in the Natural Resources Department. And we just had several discussions after listening to their stories, thinking that we perhaps could have more of an impact if we could get those kids outdoors and their hands in the dirt, growing food and getting connected to their culture. So that was the big idea in 2003. We really had no idea the adventure we were about to embark upon, but we found this beautiful piece of land in Monowili. It was overgrown with jungle. As you can see it all around the edge, that's exactly what it looked like. So from 2007 to today, with the help of thousands of volunteers and visitors, we've opened up 23 patches to specifically kalo. We also have ulu growing all around and other canoe crops, but we like to focus on kalo, and our mission is centered around particularly the at-risk youth. So we've built, our very first program was a mentoring program for these youth, and using the cultivation of kalo to embed and teach important life skills using Hawaiian values and cultural practices. So that's the first program we started with. Since that time, we officially formed our 501c3 in 2011, and we've expanded our programming now to community education, K through 12 programs, and also an internship that is now we're working and collaborating with Windward Community College to reach kids on the Windward side that would like to pursue higher education, but are maybe facing life challenges that prevent them from taking that path. So in addition, we never set out to be kalo farmers. We just knew that it had to be kalo that we would grow to bring the youth to this space, to create a safe space for them and their families to grow and get reconnected with themselves, with one another, and with community. So our role, we're the co-founders and also the co-directors. We have a staff of 9 now, but currently 13 apprentices and interns that are working with us twice a week to manage all of the lo'i. And thankfully, we're able, through this whole COVID, we've been shut down with big groups since March, but this week and last week were the first weeks we were able to invite small school groups back into the lo'i. So that it's been beautiful to hear the kids' voices and the laughter and the singing and squeals at the frogs and all the bugs around. So that's where we currently are. Did you have anything to add to that?
Not right now. I guess I'll speak a little later.
Dean is the strong, quiet one, if you cannot tell. He's also very tall. Dean and Michelle Wilhelm from Ko Hana. Next, we have Dr. Noel Peralta. Dr. Peralta?
Aloha mai kako, mahalo nui for this invitation to join in on this talk story this evening. My name is Noel Peralta, and I'm calling in from Pa'oilo in Hamakua on Hawaii Island. I represent Hui Malama i Keala Ulili. We're a small community-based nonprofit organization based here in Pa'oilo. We were founded as an organization, as an Ohana based organization in 2011. Really Ohana from this community coming together out of a sense of kuleana to care for this place, to care for this aina, and to create a safe space for our community to cultivate abundance and really develop healthy relationships with our aina and with each other. And our mission as an organization is to reestablish the systems that sustain our community through place-based educational initiatives and aina-centered practices that cultivate abundance, regenerate responsibilities, and promote collective health and well-being. And since 2011, we've been working towards fulfilling that mission through a number of different programs. The first of which started with our aina here, Koholalele, where our ohana are rooted and considered to be our piko, and really taking on the kuleana to malama this aina. And it started with, in 2011, we were just in ohana. We didn't have staff, we didn't have grant funding. We just came together with our sickles and picks and hands and our aloha for this place with aunties and uncles and cousins. And we started to plant food, clear the weeds and plant food. And it's grown since then. In 2015, we officially became a nonprofit organization. And from that program at Koholalele, which now we steward 100 acres along the coast of Koholalele, engaging in aina restoration, native ecosystem restoration, as well as now a new agroforestry project focused on growing ulu. But also we have a youth after school and summer program, which is now an all-day out-of-school program for youth in our community here in Pa'oilo, based in Hawaiian culture and aina education. And since this time of COVID began in March of last year, we began a community kitchen food distribution program, really out of response to the need in our community to build our sense of food security, food sovereignty, and make sure that our kupuna and our ohana had food, and not just food from anywhere, but really focusing on food that was being grown by the hardworking and loving mahi'ai farmers of our community. And so trying to function as a pico, as a hub for our community where they could come to be fed in more than just a way of feeding their stomachs, their opu, but really filling their na'au during these times of need. And we hope to continue to be able to do that for many, many years and generations to come. So, mahalo nui.
Oh, mahalo, Noel, appreciate it. That's an amazing story. And the view, of course, is awesome. Next, I'd like to introduce Megan Fox. Megan, you're next.
Hey, aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming together tonight, making time for this and inviting us to participate. And I just wanted to say back on Kristen's presentation, we actually participated in Debucks program. And I think it's really one of those shining programs that just really helps to leverage federal dollars to not only just bring it to our islands, but to our farmers, to our communities. And, you know, I think it was really worth it to highlight in the beginning because it's done so much for our community in the last couple of years. So thanks, Kristen. So I'm with the Malama Kauai. Malama Kauai was founded in 2006 and focuses on increasing food production and access on Kauai for a sustainable and resilient island. I joined the organization in 2014 and then recently became the executive director in 2017. And in the last few years, we've focused on a lot of different programs really related to workforce and economic development as it relates to our food systems on our island. And we do a lot because we're a small island. So none of our programs are very big, but there are usually several of them going on. So we've done work in farm to school, paid agricultural internship programs for youth and young adults, re-entry to the workforce programs for adults in ag and conservation careers. We have a gleaning program. We do farmer technical assistance programs and support. For about 10 years there, we had a community garden and farm property. But most recently, we've really been focused on developing our Moloa Aina Center, and it's a food hub on Kauai in the center of our island's largest commercial farming cluster. And in addition to our farmer technical assistance programs, we've been doing a lot of work in local food aggregation and distribution. So both to individuals and then also commercial customers. And that work has only grown greater in need and in volume since COVID. And even in these last couple of weeks, we've been working on responding to a landslide that just happened in Honolulu a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, that's a little bit summary to get it started on us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate it. That is amazing stuff that you're doing over on Kauai. And wow, those are some big grass. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. At this time, I'd like to move on to asking the panelists questions. Panelists, once again, you have 3 minutes to respond. This one is for Dean and Michelle Wilhelm from Ho'okua Aina. Together, you've been committed impact-driven activities and programs for at-risk youth, schools and families since 2006, which led you both to living your careers to launch Ho'okua Aina 5 years later. Why Kalo in particular?
Well, I think for us, you know, when I was teaching up at HYCF, we essentially had a garden. You know, the class was in, and what I really shared was it's really about what we really did was we grew food, and we were eating the food that we grew, and there's all the lessons in between. For us, when it comes to Kalo, we're growing Kalo primarily, I would say, because we have an amazing environment to grow wet taro. And so that's the number one thing. But really, Kalo was the main staple of the Hawaiian people. You know, I share that, you know, today, I'm assuming there's a lot of foodies in the audience. And so you've gone out and you've had Hawaiian food, right? So you get that big rectangle plate of food. Most of it's actually not Hawaiian food. And if you're lucky, then you get you get a small bowl of poi that's probably been watered down a little bit. In the old days, it was the complete opposite. You had a big umeke or a big bowl that sat in the center of the eating space, and everything around was an accompaniment to the eating of the poi. So for those of you who are not familiar with poi, poi is kalo is a corm. It grows, in my opinion, better in the wetland. I'm sure guys like in Hamakua would maybe disagree, maybe, but and it was then pounded into kind of like a dough-like consistency, and then it can be left out to ferment, which is actually in its healthier form to be eaten. But it was the main staple. And then there's also a Hawaiian story of creation, the story of Haloa, which is a story of that essentially shares, there's many facets to the story, and I can't go into it right now because of the time limits, but essentially Haloa or the kalo is the elder sibling of Hawaiians. And so there's a deep spiritual connection for Hawaiians to kalo, unlike any other plant. And so it makes sense to grow kalo. And what we like to say is that really it's through the growing of kalo that we grow young people and community. So it's almost like a means to a larger end. For us, we're looking for well-being. As Michelle had mentioned, really we want to make sure that every individual who comes here in some way, shape, or form walks away understanding that their life has value, meaning, and purpose. And for us, we believe that it's kind of going back to the core. It's connecting to land, connecting to one another, connecting to our own spirituality, and all of these things working together to bring wellness and well-being. And we believe that well-being really starts with a satisfied stomach, what Hawaiians would say, ma'anaka opu, a satisfied stomach. And then from there, we can then move on and do all the wonderful things that human beings are capable of doing. But it first starts with good, healthy food in our systems. And so hence kalo for us.
If you look at me, you can tell I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. Good thing, never a bad thing. I just had a real quick follow-up question. How did you inspire the community and volunteers to buy into the benefits of the kalo programs?
It was kind of the mindset of if you build it, they will come. And as we started to build lo'i, people started to find out about it. And before you knew it, we had people coming. We've never solicited ourselves. It's kind of fascinating. And we've really found that there's just this amazing demand for people to first connect to aina, and then to connect to find food that is grown in a way that we feel is the best way to grow food. And so people call us to come, and prior to COVID, we were hosting about 4,000 participants a year, which is a lot for us. And because we're not into just kind of touching numbers, we're into kind of depth of relationship. For us, everything is based on relationship. And so it's relationships to each other, relationships to the land, etc. But people just found us, and the demand it's still huge, and it's out there. And so it's really exciting to know that people are excited to connect to aina, to connect to food that is grown here in a healthy and sustainable way, and that people want more of it. We can't meet the demand. And so
yeah, there's been an incredible increase since last March. I'm sure for all of the community orgs, just people wanting to connect with people and wanting to get their hands involved in something that feels meaningful. But I remember in the early years, people would just be so grateful. They'd want to come and they'd say thank you, and we just look at each other. We couldn't figure out, why are they thanking us? We were so thankful for the hands and the help and the support, and now we're just used to it. We know that we're just the stewards of this beautiful piece of aina, and we just opened it up. So we don't really take credit for what happens when people actually get into the mud, which is sometimes, waist high. They get down and dirty, and it's hard work, and there's something so nourishing that when they come out of the lo'i, they're so grateful for having that experience.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dean and Michelle, for sharing that with us. My next question is to Kristen Frost Albrecht from the Food Basket. Hi, Kristen. Hey, thank you so much for sharing that great information in your keynote address earlier. The food basket has been on the front lines of the Debucks program, serving as a connector between organizations, farmers, and residents. How can other organizations looking to drive a movement find like-minded partners to support their journey towards achieving their mission?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think, in community work, our partners are truly everything. And there's a lot of work to be done in food security and in strengthening food systems. In our case, we look to other organizations doing similar work, both nationally and around the state. And Megan with Malama Kauai is one of the organizations, as she mentioned, we've been working with so happily for years now. And we've shared and learned and networked together. I think trusted, reliable partners, people are putting themselves out there a little bit, and that builds something really special. It's pretty beautiful when everyone is willing to bring different talents, skills, and resources to the table. And I really believe this food system work is urgent. And so I think people have risen. The name of this event, Rising Up, I think that's really happening. And that takes passionate, hardworking, community-driven organizations and people to make that change happen, just like the ones that are here tonight. I'm super impressed to hear about everybody's programs and excited to think for what that means in building food security and in the face of possibly larger disasters coming our way. So thanks.
Kristen, thank you. Thank you so much. I just have a quick follow-up question, and I know it kind of goes without saying, but how important is it to have these partners to help you get this done?
It's everything. We do everything with partners. We don't do anything by ourselves. It's really how it is. It's community. In the middle of community is unity. And so when people and organizations come together, that is community.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kristen. I appreciate it. Mahalo. Next, Megan Fox from Malama Kauai. Megan, food self-sufficiency and resilience has been a hot issue for Hawaii for the past several years. But it's even more so now a reality for Kauai, which has been dealing with extreme circumstances in 2018, the recent 2021 flooding, and of course, COVID-19. When an emergency situation arises, how do you determine how many resources to apply to that recovery?
Sure. So that's a big answer. I could respond to this really in so many ways, but I really think it comes down to the fact that there's so many factors to consider when you're responding to an emergency. Every situation, group of partners, those partners' skill sets, communication styles are all different. So you really have to know your community really well and be connected to it. And it's been proven that more connected communities are more resilient to disasters. So that's something you can do in preparedness for disasters, is get to know your community better. But one quote I heard this past week in one of our food security surveys from our recipients that really stood out to me when we were asking them, how do we respond? What should we do differently? How do you feel? And one term that came up was scarcity breeds hostility. And that really resonated with us. And so I know a lot of people, especially if you haven't been involved in disaster response before, you see everyone wanting to rush to help immediately during a disaster. And it looks like overwhelming chaos, but in the end, it's really a good thing for people to feel that abundance right away. Our strategy is we typically try to flood the impacted community with resources like food, diapers, feminine care basics within the first 24 hours to 48 hours of a disaster. And that really provides just as much psychological relief as hunger, food access, and basic needs relief. Keeps people calm. It lets them know that they're cared for. They see that abundance. it prevents anything negative, like, you know, fighting, panic buying, theft. You know, it reduces chaos to feel abundance coming in when there's a disaster, especially if getting resources and supplies in and out of an area are kind of connected to that disaster. Because it does take a little bit longer for those larger organizations, government, to take time and mobilize and respond to those kinds of things. But as those situations progress and start to stabilize, I feel like it's really critical that we look towards building sustainable systems. So some groups, it's really easy to get caught up in, oh, I want to keep my staff employed, or, you know, getting that feeling of being the hero, of being Santa Claus. But at the end of the day, continuing to just provide the same basic service in an emergency situation, you know, isn't the best solution. The best solution is trying to figure out how we can support those communities, focused on resilience and leaving communities more secure, more connected than they were before. And it's going to mean something different in every situation. I know HCF and some other foundations have used this term from charity to change. And we try to put that hat on when we're doing relief work too, and ask ourselves, you know, what are we doing that's going to create long-term change in this community, and not just flooding it with consumable resources. You know, and to do that, I think there's a couple aspects. One is how and where you spend your relief funding is really important. For us, we purchase local food from our farmers, ranchers, and bakeries to keep funding in our local economy. And, you know, even basic relief supplies you can purchase at local stores over big box stores. And especially in COVID, where our economies, island-wide, statewide, were so impacted, even just those small decisions really can make a much bigger impact. Sometimes it might cost a little bit more, but in the end, you're supporting 2, 10 families in your community instead of 1. So that's critical. The other one is having an exit plan ready. You know, I think in this recent landslide, we're doing our typical food distributions, but also executing a food security survey to better understand what gaps continue to exist in this affected community, because they're going to be continually affected. They're in a very flood susceptible zone. So, you know, we found out that most people don't know if they qualify for SNAP and EBT or Debucks. And, you know, so we're working with outreach workers for SNAP to help people share that information and sign people up. And that allows them to kind of continue to get these local grocery services with SNAP funds when that, you know, disaster relief funding kind of runs out. So you really have to look at, like, what's next, what's going to help stabilize access for folks, and not just put a patch on it short term. And really just focusing, I think, more so on the inequity that always exists in our communities, because it might be exacerbated during emergency situations, but it's always there. So if we can't address the issues that are always there during an emergency as we're moving through short to long-term recovery, then we're really not helping make a difference at the end of the day. So you really have to keep that in mind. One final note, I know I'm probably going over my time limit. You know, it's really usually the donors and the funders, including government, that controls where our funding is applied to. And typically, you know, we've seen immense interest in people helping to fund food distributions and a lot of direct service resources. There's a lot less funding available and interest in investing in infrastructure, equipment, things that would really create long-term change and improvements in our food systems and feeding programs that would make things stronger in the long term. So last thing, I just always encourage those who are funding this kind of work to make decisions based on long-term impacts and sustainability. You know, unrestricted funds with trust that organizations know what is needed in their communities the most and are going to pivot towards really investing it well. And, you know, if we can all ask ourselves how we're creating long-term change, it could make all of our food systems more resilient in the future.
Awesome. Great answer, Megan. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just had a really quick follow-up. You know, all the islands, a lot of people who don't live here don't realize that every island kind of has their own personality and their own thing that they do and their own challenges. So I kind of wanted to see from you, for Kauai, what is one particular challenge that you folks had to deal with that other islands may not have to?
That's a great question. I think our strengths are also our weaknesses in some ways, you know. Our greatest weakness is we're kind of the furthest away from everyone. You know, we're way over here. Many times we feel like we get forgotten or overlooked, and but we're also, because we're more rural, we're very, very connected to each other. You know, Oahu might have a lot more resources than us and a lot more people, but we know who our kupuna are in our neighborhoods that need help when something goes down. We know who's keiki have developmental disabilities, or they might need an extra hand watching them when something goes down. I mean, we just pay attention to who's around, and I think that ruralness has really helped us, and that connectedness has helped us be able to respond really well in disasters. Yeah.
Oh, awesome, thank you. Great answer, Megan. Appreciate it. Next, we move on to Dr. Noel Peralta. Can I do I call you Noel or do I call you Dr. Peralta? I want to make sure I say it correctly. Just want to make sure you're comfortable with me addressing you. He, of course, is from Hui Malama Ike Ala Ulili. Hui Mau is dedicated to the cultural and sustainable restoration that sustains the community on Hawaii Island. They recently undertook a large project for the restoration of ulu and Kukiu agroforestry in Waipunalau, Pauwilo, and Hamakua. How can restoring old systems help build a more resilient community on your island? And even in the state, actually, for that matter.
Yeah, mahalo nui. That's a great question. I think these times have really highlighted the importance of us understanding really the ways in which our kupuna not only lived and survived, but thrived on these islands for hundreds of generations. And really, it's rooted in these highly complex and sophisticated agricultural, aquacultural, agroforestry systems that our kupuna established for over hundreds of generations in this space, in this place specifically. And you know, us in our time are the beneficiaries of this extensive tradition of excellence when it comes to agriculture and community care that we have inherited from those who came before us in each and every part of this Pai'aina, from Hawaii to Kauai. And as part of that tradition comes with its ancestral knowledge, ike kupuna, you know, that is not only time tested and proven to have worked, you know, for all of these generations in place, where our kupuna were able to live and thrive in a place without any kind of external inputs. When we think about the ways in which we're dependent upon so many different external resources now that have kind of debilitated our own systems of food systems and food security. When we think about restoring these ancestral systems, we understand also that, like on our island, Hawaii Island in particular, at the peak of our people's population, you know, prior to foreign, you know, intrusion, our kupuna had sustained populations higher than our current population on this island, with agriculture, with aquaculture, with everything that was the abundance of this island in particular. And so we know that it can be done, and we know that we can feed more people than is currently living on this island in particular, if we're living in the ways in which our kupuna did, and functioning within the systems of abundance and pono that our kupuna established. And so in our area in particular, you know, ancestral agricultural systems are place specific, and they are resilient in the sense that they've lasted over time and were adapted over time. They survived times of epidemic. They survived times of great catastrophic change, when we think about volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, all of the things that we continue to experience today. These systems survived and continued to adapt and evolve through all of those changes over, again, not 100 years, but hundreds of generations. And so if we're able to look to those systems as really the foundation of our food sovereignty here in Hawaii, then we really can enter into that movement from a place of strength and abundance. And for us here in Hamakua, that system, that predominant system of growing and cultivating abundance was through agroforestry, as what is the term that is commonly used now. But really, it's a method of growing food in forests, and some of those forests were made up of endemic species like Ohi'alehua as the dominant canopy species, but some of those forests were made up of other species like kukui and ulu that also provided food in the sense of food that can fill our opu. And below those canopy crops were grown smaller things like bananas and coconut, and then below that the kalo, the uala, the yams, the uhi, all of those things that created a very diverse system that if one particular crop wasn't so successful one year, you always had something else to turn to fill your stomachs and to feed your ohana and community. And so, thanks to, the mo'olelo, the ike kupuna that has been passed down to us in many different forms, from oral histories to written records, to maps, to documents, and to the research of contemporary scholars, and many of them being Kanaka today, to revitalize and bring these systems back to life within our time, make them relevant in our time, and to the practitioners of this knowledge, like the folks at Ho'okua Aina, many other kipuka all around Hawaii who have turned their hands to the soil to really make it not only about these being old ancestral systems that we talk about in the past, but making them contemporary, living, breathing, and feeding systems that continue to sustain us as ohana and communities and as a lahui, as a people throughout Hawaii today and into the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Noel. I just had a real quick follow-up. My family is all from the Big Island. My father grew up in Pepekeo, so I've been around that area. So, when Hamakua went down with the sugarcane production, this was what, like 30 years ago? And I know there was a big push to do exactly what you're doing. And it's taken a few generations. Where do you see it going, after your generation is done? Where do you see it? Do you see like a farm system? Do you see a production system? Is that kind of what the vision is? Or is it more, sustainability and just living where you live and taking care of your area? Just curious.
Yeah, no, that's a really important question for us to ask ourselves in our own community here. That for over 100 years, the way that land, our aina, our lands here in Hamakua and all through Hilo Paliku, was dominated by the sugar industry. And then when that ended in the 1990s, it was replaced by another industry of forestry for a large part. For many of the acreage of aina that was cultivated in sugar became eucalyptus forests, which you see in the background here. And really what we are seeking to do as an organization, as an ohana in our community, is to think beyond that and to really create a model that is viable for communities throughout this moku of Hamakua, throughout our island, throughout all places in Hawaii really that have experienced those histories of extractive agriculture like sugarcane, to how we can first remediate and regenerate the health of our soils, the health of our aina, to be able to grow food again. That's a huge task for us in the beginning, is really restoring the health of our aina, because healthy aina is what really is the foundation for growing abundance and healthy people. So to answer your question, I think really our approach to this movement is really through Aloha Aina. And it's really how do we as communities, as ohana, help our keiki to establish strong and intimate connections with places, with specific places, the places that they call home, and to then take that to the next step of how do we care for our places like they're the most important place in the world to us? And what does it mean to commit to providing for the health and well-being of our Aina and our people, not only for our lifetime, but for the generations to come. And one of those forms is regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you answering that question, Noel. I know that you guys are doing some really great work over there, and all of you are working so hard to make sure that sustainability is the #1 key to what you're doing. So thank you for all of that. I do have some questions from the audience. The first one is from Kristen, or for Kristen, excuse me. If you could ask one thing of government at a time like this, what would it be?
I think that probably, like Megan, I see this enormous need for local processing facilities. There are efforts to create food hubs around the state, and I think those food hubs would then be around facilities that would make it easier for our farmers to keep their crops viable, giving them a chance to process. I'm a huge fan of the high pressure pasteurization technique that uses water and extends the life of fresh foods. I'm thinking of, in particular, avocado. On our island, we have tons of avocados that don't always get used, which is such a shame. So I would love to see government look forward instead of be so reactive, like wait for the disaster to happen. Let's really invest in what it takes to feed ourselves here. I think it would maybe not even take as much as they think. There's so many great efforts on the ground happening. I know that for us, even finding warehouse space, particularly during this time, has been tough. It's tough to find warehouse space, and the farmers definitely need all of that and transportation. But if we had hubs built where everyone could work together and share that space, I think it would make an enormous difference in the security of our food and in farmers expanding their crops and keeping their crops, even when there might not be sales. So that's my short answer.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate that. Next question we have is for Dean and Michelle. Someone wanted to know if you have a model that can be spread to other areas around the state, or was this sort of a perfect storm? Because you said yourself, it was if you build it, they will come. Do you see within this an opportunity to build it somewhere else?
I think it's definitely what we're doing can definitely be done in other places. I think it's about what Noel talks about. It's about having it first starts for an aloha and a care for the aina that you are in and from, or where you now call home, and taking it upon yourselves to build that relationship with that place. I talk about when we teach with kids over here, we talk about the breakdown of districts. Yeah, how you have the Mokupuni, the island, and you have the districts of on Oahu. There are 6 districts. We are in the district of Ko'olaupoko, and then we have the Ahupua'a districts. Yeah, so we're in the Ahupua'a of Kailua. And I tell everybody that generally speaking, the Hawaiians divided lands into Ahupua'a because everything that a human being needed to survive. Yeah, and this goes for anybody anywhere in the world. You need water, food, clothing, and shelter. Everything that a human being needed to survive came from that ahupua'a. Okay. Today, the water in Kailua comes from Waihole, actually. Yeah. If you were to eat a breakfast in the morning, a typical local breakfast, rice, eggs, sausage or pork of some sort, orange juice, all of that's coming from outside of Hawaii, let alone in the ahupua'a of Kailua. We don't even need to talk about the clothing we wear and where it comes from. We know it all comes from not even the United States. And then all the building materials, unless you're from Big Island and you have fancy ohia posts in your house, all the building materials come from somewhere else. But if everything came from the ahupua'a you were in, you better believe that you would be closely attuned to the welfare of the place that you're living. So that's something that doesn't preoccupy our minds. But if we are intentional about thinking of how, as if our lives depended upon it, how do we steward and care for this place? Yeah, because the world is now at a crossroads. Yeah, seemingly. Yeah, we're talking about climate change and and all these kinds of things. We're realizing that the trajectory we're on as a world, as for the world, it's very ominous looking, but the more we can perhaps start to care for our specific areas of land, develop relationships with it, learn about the names, the stories, the history, the places, and then start to just care for our own backyard, so to speak. I think then we have an opportunity to then, in our own way, it's going to be different for every ahupua'a in every region. Yeah, and like how Noel pointed out, it's all specific. You know, they cannot grow lo'i kalo up in Pa'awilo the way we can, but they can still grow kalo and many other things better than what we can because the conditions are suitable for that. So learning those areas, learning what the land gives, you know, we eat what we have, yeah, and so we learn to adapt, and it's definitely doable throughout our pai'aina in different ways, shapes, or forms.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. Megan, really quick, how can the community and the attendees tonight join your movement to help build a more resilient Hawaii?
Sure. I guess it depends on where you are. I saw some of the questions come up. Cassidy, I know you were asking about even just getting foot in the door, how to connect into things. And one of the things I would say is look around at what's already happening in your community. You know, there's so many nonprofits, there's so many community-based organizations, there's so many work days. If it's happening on Little Kauai, I imagine everybody else's island is packed with these things too. So, you know, step one is just really asking around, opening your eyes and see what's happening in your community, because guarantee, you know, there's one lo'i that needs help down the street from you, or there you have a food bank and that has a food pantry day, or, you know, there's work to do. There's work to do everywhere. So, I'd say take a look at two things. One, what makes your heart sing and what gets you excited to give back. And then two, what your talents and your skills are, because maybe you have a skill and a talent that's unique and can help, you know, your community in a different way. You might want to do something outside of your skill set and learn something new too, but, you know, take a look at what really excites you. And if you look around and ask around in your community, you'll find it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Megan. My last question is actually for Noel, and it's from Kalisi Mausio. I went, Kalisi, really? What sort of support do you need to be able to share your mana'o for those who want to learn more or practice traditional agroforestry?
Kalisi, and mahalo for that question. You know, I think that the movement around agroforestry, as we call it now, and really regenerative agroforestry and agricultural practices that are rooted in place-based and ancestral systems of Hawaiian knowledge is really growing on this island and throughout Hawaii as people are seeing it in practice. You know, seeing the real benefits of it, not only for our aina, for our communities, but for ourselves as individuals, as people, and the ways in which practicing these forms of connecting to aina, growing our own food and feeding our families really produce vibrant and healthy communities like you see what is being done in Kailua, Ho'okua Aina, and all over that Ahupua'a and other places throughout Hawaii. You know, I think that in terms of support, you know, like Megan said, I mean, if you are in your community looking for a place to connect to Aina, seek out those organizations, those places. They're all over the place throughout Hawaii. Find them and go and connect. And if you are just seeking an opportunity to learn for yourself to grow food in your own backyard or porch or garage or bathroom or wherever it might be, find those places and offer a helping hand. If you so happen to work in government or for an institution, a funder, same, find those places, connect with people who are doing this amazing work in all the different corners of our Pai Aina, and use your platform to really uplift the voices of our communities that are engaged in Aloha Aina, to really bring people together and the resources together necessary to not only make the work that we do as something that your kids go to for an excursion, but to make this the norm of our lives, our lifeways again here in Hawaii. That it's not just that our places like here in Koholalele and Ho'okuaina exist as pockets in our community, but that these pockets grow to become the norm of the way that we live and thrive in Hawaii again. And it's gonna take us creating these systems that exist, from family systems to communities to education systems to governance systems, that really support and empower communities to make decisions about the health and well-being of our Aina, and to empower education in our schools that really instill these values of Aloha Aina, and to make decisions in policy in where our resources and funding is being directed, to really, like Megan said, to invest in the resilience of our communities in really affecting true change over charity and short-term kind of, we really need to focus on and invest in the future of our Aina and the future of our people by putting it there. Mahalo.
Mahalo. No, I appreciate it. Okay, so we are actually out of time. That was an awesome session. Thank you so much to Kristen Frost Albrecht from the Food Basket, Dean and Michelle Wilhelm from Ho'okuaina, Dr. Noel Peralta, Hui Malama Ike Ala Ulili, also Megan Fox from Malama Hawaii. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise and your mana'o. We really appreciate you taking this time. So mahalo and good luck with everything you have coming up in the future. Want to remind everybody before we go, Hawaii Ag Foundation will be hosting Eat, Think, Drink. It's called High Pressure Processing, Innovation, and Value Add-on next Wednesday. That's a lot of stuff. Just come join us. It's going to be good fun. It's happening March 31st at 6 p.m. You can visit hawaiiagfoundation.org if you want to register. Once again, my name is Devin. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Aya and Michelle and Denise, always over here over my shoulder watching to make sure I don't mess up too badly. Till we see you again on the next one, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Aloha, ahui ho.